Hey everybody, what's going on? I'm the Chess Nerd, and today we're going to be talking about my win against celebrity chess GM Jen Shahade. I beat her in a 3-minute game on chess.com, and let's see how it goes. Jen Shahade is a women's Grandmaster and a 2-time US women's chess champion. She is still big in the chess community, doing live analysis of big tournaments and working for big companies as well. She is the author of Play Like a Girl and Chess and is also featured in a TED Talk.
How many moves could you beat me in?
Jen Shahade is a big legend. So in this game I'm black, and Jen Shahade starts off with e4. I respond with my typical e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, knight f6. I let her some potential, for I liver action if she would accept it, but she didn't. She went for a very conservative d3, and now this lets me bishop e7 with castling on my next move. Castles. c3 here by Jen Shahade, maybe looking to fold the bishop and create a battery. That's typically how these plans go on. Maybe also d4 plans, maybe knight f1 plans. The plans are bountiful in this position. So I go d6, bishop b3, h6, knight bd2, knight h7. So my plan here with black is to play king h8, get out of this pin, and play f5 and really push towards the king there. So rook e1, looking to fold her knight on f1 to go to then g3. King h8, knight f1, f5, developing on my plan, really trying to maybe push f4 and attack the white king. Takes, so now I have center pawns, and she has only one center pawn, so she's going to try to attack my center and put pressure on my center. And she does with knight g3. This was my first mistake of the game, bishop d7. I should have folded on g6 and kept a very nice bishop on this diagonal. Instead, my bishop on d7 is quite bleak, not doing much, and a passive piece overall. So d4, as I told you, trying to put pressure on my center. I go with bishop f6, trying to defend the center and even attack this d4 square. And she goes knight h5, trying to attack my bishop. I really want to exchange this bishop. It's not a good bishop that I really want to keep. Yes, I have the bishop pair currently, as does she, but this bishop is not even worth keeping the bishop pair because it's so passive. And so I just let her take my bishop, and she does so. And after she takes back here on d4, she has an isolated pawn on d4. And now I put pressure on that pawn indirectly by doing bishop g4 here. And I really like this move. So for one, I'm pinning this knight to this queen. I'm adding a triple pressure on this knight. And most overall, I am adding pressure on this d4 pawn. This d4 pawn looks like it's falling. I'm threatening knight takes d4 on the next move. And just like 4 of my pieces are in the attack. I really like my position at this point in the game. So she plays bishop d5, and here this is a very good protection of her knight, but sadly, after takes with attacking her queen, I gain a pawn in this position. Now, she calculated that after takes, she regains the pawn on b7, so I thought that this was false because after rook b8, I threaten her bishop, which she has to respond to. It's a threat. And also, I threaten knight c2, forking the rook on e1 and the rook on a1. And after bishop e4, I had calculated knight takes, rook takes, and I could still perform the fork on c2 here, which is false. And I was so pissed at myself that I forgot that the rook moved from here. Really a rookie mistake. Here I'm winning, actually. So I have just a move that wins a piece. Really subtle. It's rook be8. Just pinning the bishop to the rook and adding pressure on this bishop. And say I play it, and she has to defend a second time with f3. I simply have d5, and then just adding a third pressure on this bishop. And this bishop cannot fold and protect his rook at the same time, so eventually he loses a piece here. I missed that, sadly, but I still have an advantage here because Jen is very underdeveloped. Her bishop and her rook haven't moved at the game. Contrarily to me, with rooks very active on these open files here. This rook kind of stopping short, but it's better than hers. So I tell myself, okay, at least I have the draw here, right? So I have a little perpetual that I could just be going to a3 and c2 with my knight and call it a draw. But this is the move where I tell her indirectly, right, that I'm hunting for the win with rook e8. So giving up on a potential draw usually means that you're playing for the win here. And why I decided to play for a win against a GM, a Grandmaster, like the balls I needed, right, is because I have the positional advantage here. If I could get use of this open file and trade rooks, I could have an advantage in this position. Also, I have a little majority here against Jen. And she doesn't have a king like over there to protect against the majority, so I assume that this majority is superior to her majority here because I have a king to defend it. So after rook e8, f3, I put more pressure on her rook with d5, and now she's forced to exchange rooks. So I do gain the e file, and my goal is really to plant a rook on that e1 square and then just pin this bishop to this rook and build onto that advantage. Bishop f4. c5, so she attacks my pawn. Luckily for her, because I would have just planted my rook on e2, maybe that would have been the strong move here and giving up this pawn. But if bishop takes c7, you know, knight e3 is not assured that I'm winning here because of g3. So I have to respond with a pawn move, but I'm really still threatening rook e2 here to cut off the king. Rook c1, and now I play rook e1. I think I should have played rook e2 to defend my knight. But then she would have had king f1. And now defending my rook is kind of tricky because I need to stay covering this knight, and then knight d4 doesn't work because rook takes c5, so she would have won. So very nice move by her, forcing me to do rook e1 to trade rooks. Because I assume that in this position, these two pawns are going to do me a favor and make me win if I can convert one of these two pawns in a passed pawn. So b3, knight d3, attacking the bishop and threatening knight c1 if she goes off of this diagonal. And she does. Bishop b8, a6, bishop a7, and now I have to push this pawn because I just want to free my knight from protecting the c5 square. So takes, bishop d4, covering this square, and making it annoying for my king to just go away because it's pinned the pawn is pinned right now, and I would have to move it first. So knight c1, attacking that pawn and threatening a beautiful fork on e2, very sneakily, right? So this wins me a second pawn in this on this side of the board, which is very favorable for me because I can use this advantage and just lure this king towards the queen side. So the king comes over, and I have to play this knight d5 move, very important to cover the c3 square so that the king cannot pass. You shall not pass! As the great Gandalf the Grey would say. So I'm covering these three squares and the king cannot pass here. These four squares and the king cannot pass here. Very, very good by me. G3, king g8, f4, king f7, and now, as I said, this pawn is kind of a weakness. I have to like move this pawn before I can make my king active. So g6 takes, and now g4, king g5, and h3. And now I make my second mistake of the game, a big mistake here, a mistake of judgment. So they're not always mistakes where you lose, but they're mistakes of I could have done better. So king f4, you have to learn from this. So yes, the intuition is putting the king towards the center and eventually helping this pawn queen. But that's not the right move here. I should have played king h4, attacking these two pawns and really gobbling them up against this h6 pawn that she would retrieve with bishop g7, bishop takes h8. So king f4, not that good. Bishop g7 forces my king to come back to g5. Bishop f8, a5, king c2, a4, gliding my pawn over there. I don't know why she didn't come up with the plan king b2, king a3. Maybe it would have been good. I think it would have worked and she would have gotten this pawn because for me this pawn is very hard to defend with my knight. So King h4. This time I do it good, and this forces her to play bishop f8, and now I get 2 pawns for 1, so I'm really 2 pawns up in this position finally. So I have very good advantage. At this point in the game, Jen is playing for a draw only, and she has 12 seconds on her clock. King f4, bishop d6, king e4, bishop f8, and king d4, bringing my king over and trying to convert this into a win. Bishop a3, knight e3 check, king d3 here. Bishop e4, c3, king b1, knight d5. I want to play knight d5 here to go back to f4 and finally land on d2 so this pawn promotion can happen. So that was the plan in those 8 seconds that I had left. So king c1, and now she just gives a bishop, so that's free. And from here, I just finish it off with a nice little checkmate. So I hope you enjoyed the video. This is my win against Jen Shahade, woman grandmaster, one of the top in the world for the women's category. Just a terrific player. And cheers to you, Jen. You played it really well. Please like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to hit 1,000 subscribers to get monetized on YouTube. So if you could do that, that'd be awesome. And have a great day.